Want to join in on the Janome ASR fun? Well, come along. Hey guys, it's Boki here from Gigi's Fabric Shop, home to Janome Junkies and Juki Junkies, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about ASR. So what is ASR? Well, ASR stands for Accurate Stitch Regulator. It is a stitch regulator designed by Janome for a select few of their Janome machines to regulate the stitches while you're free motion quilting. If you have ever free motion quilted before on your machine, you know that it's very hard to regulate your stitch length so it's consistent all the way through. And if you don't have something to help you do that, it takes a lot of practice to truly perfect it. Where this kind of takes out that learning curve and makes it so much easier for you. You just plug it into the machine and you're ready to go, and it'll regulate all the stitches for you. So in today's video, I'm going to show you what comes with the ASR, the different attachments that comes with it, just how easy it is to install on the machine, and we're actually going to play on it, and I'll give you guys a little tips and tricks on how to use it. So before we dive too deep, let's talk about what machines can actually use the ASR. So with me today, I have the M8, which I'll be demoing on. So the M8 can use the ASR, as well as the CM17 and the 9480. So any other machines are not going to have that capability of the ASR, so that's really something to keep in mind, especially if you're on the new market for a new quilting machine and you want to find something that has this capability. You'll kind of have to narrow it down to those three models and figure out which one would be the best fit for you. And of course, if you need any help along the way, always give Janome Junkies a call and we'll listen to your needs and pair you up with the right machine for you. So let's get started and look at all these little attachments that come inside this box. So when you get the ASR, or if you purchase it, it comes in this beautiful little hard cased box, and the foam is perfectly cut to hold everything nice and securely on the inside. So let's take a peek inside, shall we? First off, you're actually going to find the ASR attachment. So on the little ASR, one side is like a little cable part that plugs into the back of the machine, and then you install the foot. And installed on the ASR is going to be the closed toe foot for free motion quilting. Then you'll find three additional attachments inside the box. The next one is going to be the front open toe. So much like the closed toe, this is just an open view, so that way you can see where you're going. It's a little bit better. Of course, there's pros and cons to when you want to use certain ones. Like for example, the closed toed foot would be fantastic for if you're working with a very textured quilt, something that has flanges or appliques, where the open toe might get caught on that free motion quilting. So for anything that's very flat and doesn't have a lot of dimension going on the top, then your open toe would certainly be a great option for you to be able to give you the best visibility of where you want to go. Next up, you get the Echo Quilting foot. This foot is awesome to help you with echoing your quilting. So if you have a panel or if you have something that you just kind of want to follow the outline of, the Echo Quilting foot is certainly a great option, giving you those two grid lines to help you create dimensional quilting, or that effect of following the last stitch that you did. It's also nice and clear, so you do have great visibility with the guidance of those little red markers. And then last but not least, the ruler work foot for the ASR. This is going to be super, super helpful for any type of ruler work. Ruler work has been really, really popular, and it's kind of a hard skill to learn because you're moving the fabric and holding the ruler at the same time. So with the help of the ASR, you take out a whole nother component of having to manage how fast you're going. So this little foot has a rised detail to it, so that way the rulers sit very nice to the foot and they don't slide under, they don't slide on top. It sits right onto that edge, making ruler work a lot easier. So you just have to decide which attachment is going to be most practical for your sewing application. For today's purposes, I'm going to be using the open toe foot and also showing you how to change out these feet because it's really, really simple. All right, so let's go ahead and change out this foot into the open toe one. It's really, really simple, you guys. All you're going to do is grab the attachment and just pull down and then pull right out. And then to put the right one that you want, you just kind of have to guide it into these little side grooves and then pop it up so that it snaps on both sides in those little grooves, those little cutouts right there. And that's really it. We're ready to plug it onto the machine. All right, so let's get ready to install the ASR. So all you're gonna have to do is loosen your screw here, so that way we can take off this little ankle and foot. And then you're gonna grab your ASR and you're just going to install it right in that same spot. Maybe loosen the screw a little more so that way it actually fits on. And then you're just going to tighten the screw. Hand crank it first, and then of course go in with your screwdriver to make sure that it's nice and tight. So really, that's how we simply install it onto the machine. Now we have to plug in this back to the back of the machine. So now we're at the back of the machine. You're gonna notice this little hidden door, and then you're gonna grab your back plug into the ASR and just simply plug it in, female part to the male part, just like that. All right, so now let's set the machine up and let it know, communicate to the machine what we're trying to do. So we have our ASR plugged in. We're gonna go into this little t-shirt, and remember, this is gonna look a little different through the varying models, but it's very, very similar. That's the one thing that's really admirable about Janome, is they really do keep those key navigation points always the same. So find your little t-shirt, which is where your shortcuts are going to be, and then we're gonna go into the little kind of free motion looking heart, and we're gonna go into free motion. There's gonna be a lot of different options here. When you navigate through these options, it's always gonna let you know which ones can be used with the ASR. So for example, these first 3 cannot be used with ASR because it's not being highlighted, indicating that we can use it. This is basically a left needle position for free motion quilting. This is a center needle position for free motion, and this is a zigzag. So these could be used with your standard free motion quilting with like your darning foot without the ASR. Now when we jump into stitch number 3, you'll notice that the ASR highlights, and it's showing us that we can use this with the QC and the QO foot. So the open toe and the closed toe plastic little feet. So you can also use these without the ASR, but the ASR does turn on to let you know, hey, if you wanted to use the ASR, you certainly can. So same thing, center needle position, left needle position, and a zigzag style stitch for the ASR. So once you've selected, number 3 is probably gonna be your most common one. You're gonna press the ASR, turning it on, and then here you're gonna have your stitch length. So you can kind of gauge that depending on how long you want those stitches. I like to kind of be at like a 3, somewhere 3.5 for my stitches. So let's put this to the test. Let's grab our little quilt sandwich and grab our little quilt gloves. These are our gecko gloves. These are fantastic. I'm gonna get these all ready to go, and we're gonna give this ASR a try. All right, so I have my gloves all ready to go, and I have my little sandwich. So what I mean by a sandwich is just like your imitation quilt block. So I have my layer on the back, layer on the top, and my batting in between. And now we're ready to play. So I'm gonna go ahead and tuck this under. And you can drive your ASR with your start stop button on the machine, or of course your foot pedal, but naturally for the start stop to work, your foot pedal has to be unplugged. So I'm gonna put my presser foot down, and I'm gonna operate mine with the start stop. Speed control is not a factor here because you need to control how fast you're moving. While the ASR is meant to regulate your stitch quality, there is such a thing of moving too fast for the ASR to keep up with you. I'll give you a good example of that as we get to practice here, but let's just admire how easy this is. So when I press start, it's gonna go ahead and take 1 single stitch for me, which is really nice because that allows me to pull up my bobbin thread, so that way I could do my tie off before I get started, or just sew in place if I wanted to, but that is great. Now when I press start again, it's just gonna go. So now it's just up for me to move. And if I wanna stop, I press my stop, and the needle is gonna end in a down position, so I can easily pivot and conquer my next little area. I would highly recommend you guys use your extension table when you're doing this as well, just so that way your sandwich is nice and flat as possible, giving you the best, freedom. It gives you a lot more space for your hands as well. So it really moves like butter. The one piece of advice I would really give you is that if you start moving too slow, it can get a little hard to manage, the regularity. So it really goes both ways, not moving too slow and not moving too fast. But as you can see here, the stitches are really doing a good job. They're staying nice and uniform. They're not getting too long or too slow, which is a common challenge when trying to regulate the stitch quality on your own. I couldn't believe how easy and fun this is to do. So look how beautiful, super simple, and it's really just up to you to meander and practice and play and just doodle, pretend like you're on a phone call and just doodle away. walk you through a couple helpful tips as far as regulating your stitches even further with the help of the ASR. So naturally, if I'm going too fast, watch what happens, right? So this is regulated speed. So doing like a 3, the stitches are nice and regulated, a little more decorative, but watch what happens when I move too quickly for the ASR. The stitches start to get incredibly long. The machine is still doing a pretty good job, but there is such a thing as moving too fast for the ASR. So keep that in mind. Definitely make some practice sandwiches to make sure that you can maintain your speed, of course, and try not to move too fast so that way the ASR can do what it's meant to do. Just like any stitch regulator, if you move too fast, it usually starts beeping at you, screaming at you, telling you to slow down because it just can't keep up with you going that fast. Another little tip I wanted to mention, if you like to do like really tight free motion quilting or like micro stippling or something where you're going very, very slow. Remember how I mentioned moving slow can sometimes be a little hard? Well, in help with that, if you make your stitch length tighter, like you bring it down to like a 2.5 or like in the 2s, it's gonna work in your favor when you're trying to do those really small types of free motion quilting. So it's gonna regulate the stitches a lot better. It's not gonna be as jerky. And it's going to be able to maintain the stitch quality better because the stitch length is not so long. So keep that in mind for just depending on what you're trying to do. If you make that stitch length too long, it's still not going to look good if you're moving super slow. So if you want to go a little bit slower, tighten that stitch length up, or tighten that stitch length to be a little bit tighter. While talking about moving too fast and too slow, I wanted to show you what is actually telling how fast or how slow you're moving. On the bottom of the ASR is the little sensor window. This is reading your fabric and it's able to tell how fast or how slow you're moving. So it's really important that you try not to touch this and get your fingerprints on it. Naturally, if you've been quilting for a while, maybe it's time to turn it around, grab some of our cleaning swabs and just wipe the bottom to make sure that there's no lint. But this little window is what's doing all the hard work for us. It's what's regulating our speed as we're moving fast and slow. So make sure that this little sensor is always nice and clean. So let's talk about a couple extra tips that just make free motion quilting a little bit easier. So let's talk about the needle. Free motion quilting with the right needle is going to be super, super important. I highly recommend using top stitch needles. We carry Schmetz needles. You can use the Janome needles as well, of course, but the top stitch needles have that unique characteristic to them where the needle of the eye is very large, allowing you to help prevent skip stitches. So naturally with free motion quilting, since there's a lot of needle deflection and the fabric is kind of jerking around left and right, your needle needs to keep up with what you're doing. So a top stitch needle is a great way to prevent skip stitches without having to size up to a larger needle. 90-14 is a great way to go for free motion quilting. Now let's talk about the needle plate and the bobbin case. So on the machine today, on the M8 that I was using, I just used the standard bobbin case, which on this machine is the yellow dot, which the yellow dot, they changed it up on me. So I have notes because it was a little confusing. The old machines used to have different colors on the bobbin cases. So the red dot used to be the standard, which is what they call the 10 gauge. And then the yellow dot used to be for embroidery, but now it's a little switched. The yellow is the normal and the embroidery is the white. So it's a little, I still have to get used to that switch up in my brain, but if you get a new one, you don't have to worry about that. The yellow dot bobbin case is your standard one. So you can totally free motion quilt with your standard one, but to make free motion quilting even better and your stitches maybe even a little bit crisper is by using the blue dot bobbin case. The blue dot bobbin case is what they refer to as the 8 gauge. It loosens the bobbin tension just a little bit, so then that way it helps with the kind of nature of free motion quilting. It's also going to be really nice for free motion quilting when you're not using ASR, when you need to regulate it yourself. So the yellow dot bobbin case is a safe bet for any type of free motion quilting, but you certainly can just do it with your standard. Perform some tests to see how you're doing. Honestly, I have a dark thread on the bottom and a white thread on top, and my tension still looks really, really good. So you can totally go that way too. Let's talk about the needle plate as well. So on this machine, standard, you do have a different needle plate option, but I just have the jelly bean plate, meaning the plate that's completely open where the machine allows me to do all the stitches, all different types of decorative stitches. There's no limitations. Now, could you put the straight stitch needle plate on this and free motion quilt? You certainly could, and there's gonna be some benefits to that. With the larger opening, there's more area for the fabric to get sucked down into, whereas the straight stitch needle plate has a smaller hole, so there's less bounce of that fabric, so you're going to find that your stitches are going to be a little bit crisper. So you certainly could do that. That's kind of like a rule of thumb for me. I always like to do my straight stitch plate just like in embroidery. You always want to have that straight stitch needle plate on when you're doing embroidery, that single hole, because it just helps that stitch quality just enough, prevents that bounce of that fabric. So all of those little tips together, would recommend those quilting gloves as well. It allows you to have a really nice grip on your quilt. Use that extension table that I mentioned earlier for you guys as well, especially when you're doing large scale quilts. The goal is to have that quilt not weigh you down. Don't let gravity work against you. Have it try to be as nice and flush as possible, so then that way it's not dragging down on you and the ASR can perform how it's supposed to. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. The ASR really blew my mind. This is kind of the first time I gotten to play with it, and it is fantastic. Honestly, my first reaction was, this is so easy. You could do this for hours. I had a practice piece, and I very quickly filled it up very quickly because it was just so much fun. So if you are just getting into free motion quilting, or if you're trying to make your free motion quilting a little bit easier and maybe you're struggling with the regulation of your stitches, the ASR is a fantastic way to go. Honestly, I cannot speak highly enough about it. I'm not talented in this kind of free motion quilting. I'm talented in standing up and moving the machine. So this definitely opened my eye to a whole nother way, and maybe I can get good at this way too with the right amount of practice. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you're never missing out on fun information. If you guys have any questions on the ASR or the machines that are compatible with ASR, definitely pick up that phone and give us a call or send us an email. All that information will be down in the description below, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.